to another show. Don't get this twisted. I am Rob, along with my co-host as always, Tina. How you doing, Tina?
I'm hanging in there, Rob. It's been quite the day so far. So
it has.
It's kind of like deja vu right now.
Almost exactly like deja vu.
Right?
Like we've done this show before and it ended up sounding bad and I couldn't use it.
Yeah, so we're back at it, doing it again so that everybody could hear us.
I know, which is even funnier because now it's how many hours later? 5 or 6 hours later. and here's the funny thing. When we decided to do the show, we forgot what we talked about this morning, which is kind of funnier.
Yeah, it's been a long day so far.
It's been a morning.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite humorous. I'm glad we got the test run out of the way.
Yeah. We'll see what this show brings. Because of course we're not scripted. I mean,
yeah, that's sometimes I wish we were, so it would make this much easier.
No,
but no, I disagree. I couldn't scripted shows. I couldn't do those. That would be so impersonal. That's what makes us us. We can do all kinds of crazy shit. Oh, and it's hot.
It is hot. It is so hot. I was out until just a little bit ago. And even sitting down on the seats right now is not cool on the backside.
Mm-hmm. Do you have leather interior?
I do.
Yeah, me too.
I do. And it burns your ass.
Yeah, me and the kid just got back from lunch. So I literally just walked in the door and it's 93 where I'm at.
Yeah, it was 102 in my car. So it's a hot one.
It's good. The summer switch has been turned on. Me and my friend down the street, we're talking because she's lived out where I live her whole life. And I was like, hey, the last 2 summers were really good. The first summer I moved here was brutal. We had like a whole month of like 106. It was absolutely horrible. And then the next summer, it was nice. Like it was still 90, but it was like that. It really didn't get higher than like 92 the whole summer. Mm-hmm. And I was like, hey, is this good? She's like, don't jinx it. Just let it go. And then we had another summer. And then I was just talking to her and she goes, yeah, I think it's going to be a bad summer. Because we had like that 2 or 3 days, like 2 weeks ago that were like brutal and it was out of nowhere. And she goes, yeah, we're screwed. So, and I was like, yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was like, yeah, you're probably right. And it's probably, and you're going to get it too.
So last year, so I'm really light complected. And I have to go out in the sun to get some color. Otherwise, I tell everybody I look transparent. Mm-hmm. So last year, we couldn't even get in the pool till after the 4th of July because we weren't having warm enough weather for the pool to get warm. We don't have a heater in the pool, but normally it's not a problem in California, right? Well, this year, we've been in the pool now 2 weeks. So we're talking middle of June, we've been able to start off and it is brutal. I've already burnt again, still waiting for that second peel. And this is all in a couple weeks. It's been fantastic.
Yeah.
You can't see through me now.
It's a positive too, because she has a pool as well. And I was asking her the same thing. She takes her grandbabies in there. And I was like, so how is it? Is it nice? She's like, yeah, because it's hot outside now.
Yeah.
Like it's starting to warm up. I'm like, And and it's not getting super duper cool at night.
No, that's what makes the pool stay warm is the warmer nights. I've already gone through 2 bottles of sunscreen.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been in the pool a lot. A lot.
All righty. Well, let's jump into the show. We are going to do it on avoiding conflict.
Yeah.
Because
because who wants to deal with conflict?
Yeah. And I think it's the looking at it from both sides, because since we've done the show already, I think that now I can have a much larger, rounder picture of it, because, avoiding contact or conflict is kind of a must in a lot of ways, because it will keep you safe. I think it's it's a device to say, hey, if I don't do this, I stay happy, right? Or I stay safe. Because a lot of us end up, content. If you're content, if you avoid conflict, you end up being content. But then you ruminate, and then the next thing you know, it builds into this monstrous volcano of bullshit and hate, and then you end up just and it blows up on everybody.
Yeah. I don't know. I like to talk. I'm the one that wants to talk about whatever it is that's going on. And I'm not a fan of being ignored when we're going through that. I don't need to be talked to all the time. I don't need somebody to be, I don't need attention 24/7. I don't. But if there's an issue and you don't want to discuss it, or you're not going to discuss it, that's not going to sit well with me. Like I definitely need to talk about things, but I don't want to sit there and throw like ego back and forth at each other. I want to have a conversation. I want to try to resolve it so I could get back to being happy with you and loving to you and like not have to deal with constant being mad, because that doesn't sit well with me. It just doesn't make me a good person.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to talk about it.
I agree with you. I'm much like that. I would rather get things out in the open and avoid real conflict.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you bring something to the forefront, or you want to have a discussion with somebody, that's not like serious conflict.
No.
That is, hey, let's nip this in the ass before it gets to be this monster.
Mm-hmm.
Real conflict, I think everyone tries to avoid. It's the one thing that like, it'll burn at you all day long because it's coming at night.
Yeah,
like,
I hate that.
That's the worst. Mostly like when you were young and you knew like,
wait till your father gets
was
home.
Coming. Yeah, or your report card came and you knew it was shitty, and it was just the whole day you were just like,
those were the worst of times. The freaking grades. My brother and another person that was staying here at the time that my parents were kind of like foster parents too, I would hate it because I would get good grades and they wouldn't. Mm-hmm. And I'd have to hear it anyway. And it would make my stomach sick. And I'd be like, oh my God, like almost like I was taking the punishment as if it was my own. And I hated grades. I hated grades for that reason.
Yeah. And I think that there's that kind of conflict in relationships.
Oh yeah.
Right. Where something's coming, or you can feel it in your partner where they've been kind of distant or whatever. And you don't know what day it's coming, but it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
So then every day you come home is shitty like that. Or if you're in a relationship that's semi-narcissistic, where every day is a conflict. I couldn't live in a house like that. And I know people who have,
mm-hmm.
where literally they would rather be at work than be at home.
For sure.
And I was like, wow, my relationships have never gotten that bad to where like, even when I knew conflict was coming, bad stuff but not enough to go like, oh, I just wish I could stay at work all day. And I know more than one person that's happened to.
Wow.
Or the flip side, where one was a stay-at-home mom and really didn't want their husband to come home because every time he came home, it was conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand the avoidance. Like we all want to avoid that. So, and I think that's where your romantic side of the conflict, those type of things where you avoid it at all costs. So like in her case, she would make sure dinner was made. She would,
mm-hmm.
Make sure the kids were always around, like doing things with the kids. So then he couldn't, mess with her.
Yeah.
And it was wild to hear that kind of thing. Cause I'm such a, hearing a bunch of things about different people's relationships, I realize that I'm just a different cat. Like I'm just a totally different kind of human.
Yeah, you kind of are though.
I am. And like when I hear about these men that are just total pieces of shit, I'm just like, I don't understand that. That's not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's like very difficult to see that. And I'm sure it's the same with women who aren't like horrible narcissistic women like that. You know what I mean? So like, it's probably the same. But for me, you know, avoiding the middle ground or higher kind of conflicts, I can understand. You don't want to talk about certain things, and because you know, like, I've been at work all day. I came home, like, I just want the night to go by, and then one of the partners doesn't, and the next thing you know, it's like shit starts popping off, and things go, and then it just ruins things. So I can understand the avoidance.
I get it, but at the same time, if you want something to work, you can't avoid it. You just have to find a way around it. Set your ego aside and have a real conversation, and then listen to what's being said to you, and then, you know, put it to work, like make it work for you. Like, if I'm in a relationship with somebody, it's because I want to be there. And if I want to be there with them, I don't want to sit there and be miserable with them. Like, I got too many things I would rather be doing with them, and I guarantee they would have a good time. But to sit there and have like these wrecking ball conversations, it's just so draining and unnecessary. You know, if you love somebody, or if you care about somebody, or if you're respectful of somebody, you try to communicate, get your point across, and still try to hear what everybody else is saying. That's what makes a good communication. And,
right.
You know, I will avoid, but then I'll be the one to be like, nope, let's fix this, because I can't live with the big old elephant in the room. I just can't.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of this, I think, goes back to growing up, right? It's the avoidance of getting in trouble with our parents, I'm sure, or avoiding that. Because I mean, at least in my case, I had a single dad, and I did my best to avoid getting in trouble. So I would do my best to avoid being in the house for a lot of different reasons. I mean, not just because me and my dad had issues, but just because I knew if something was coming, I would do my best to, like, I'd come home the latest I can if I knew I was going to get in trouble, because then I could at least be outside for a long period of time, knowing that I was going to get
in your
prison
final
time.
days.
Yeah, like if you knew you were going to get grounded that last day, well, you stayed out. That's
right.
That's avoidance on the biggest level of anything. That's the biggest avoidance of conflict ever.
Oh, that's
because
funny.
You were like, okay, I know. And it's funny because my best friend, you know, I lived in an apartment building. There was a parking road in between his house and the apartments that I lived in.
And I remember.
And the same thing happened to him all the time, because we were always in some kind of issue or some kind of trouble for not doing something we were supposed to. So we avoided conflict like the Black Plague with our parents.
Yeah.
And there's good reason, because, you know, you didn't want to get in any kind of trouble. Or there's people who avoided their parents for other issues. Like, I mean, you know, you can go down the line of narcissistic parents, alcoholic parents, you know, whatever it is, that's also avoiding conflict. If you had somebody who drank every night in your house, I'm sure that had to be the biggest avoidance of conflict ever.
Well, I didn't experience that, but I know that at the end of my mom's life with the pills, I wanted to avoid it at all costs, but I couldn't because I had to be there. But I remember just every day going, fuck, I don't want to do this today. I just want to run. Like, run. I always felt like I just needed to run to get away from life, you know, because it was too serious and it was too depressing, and it was just seemed kind of hopeless.
And that's a conflict on many levels. That could be a mental conflict, a physical conflict with somebody who is under the influence of a narcotic, who knows what they're going to do. Those are the type of issues.
Conflict, you know, because before my mom had the aneurysm, she was like a super mom, and she could do anything, and she was brilliant. Like, she was fun. All my friends loved her. She was the one that everybody went to. And to see her go from that to something that was so broken, and I couldn't get her back. You know, her brain didn't work the same. Nothing worked the same, and I couldn't get her back. And that was a conflict, dealing with this whole person that I didn't know, didn't love, wasn't, you know, I didn't know her. I didn't know who she was after the brain aneurysm. And the person that I did love and that I did know and I could count on wasn't there, but I still had my person. It was, yeah, that was a hard one for me.
I mean, I can see, and avoidance was probably what you were.
Ooh, I ran every chance I got.
Yeah. I mean, look, conflict sucks. But sometimes it's the only way to fix a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, and I know that's like, it, as bad as it sounds, it is true, because some things have to come to a head.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's like, I'll give you the example of, parent a child. You come home and you ask your kid to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, you have a list, because I'll leave a list for my kid during the day. And I'll come home and see that, one of the 4 got done. And I'm like, come on. But, I don't want to bring conflict, because I know he's going to, then we're both just going to have a shitty night. But I can't let it go, because if I do, then he thinks it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll find a way to avoid the conflict for a small bit of time. Because if I come home and just start slamming him, then he wants to go too. Like, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. And I got to hear that. So those are the things where avoidance doesn't help, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm making the problem worse by not saying anything to him. But then I have to take the repercussions of, why do you always have to do this? And you're always doing this. So I get it. And, when you have that kind of things going on in life, it does suck. My friend, she has 3 kids, and they're all older, and they all have their own, none of them live there.
Mm-hmm.
So they have their things, and there's avoiding conflict with, some that don't talk, they don't talk anymore, and other issues. And then, this child's doing this, and one lives far away, and she's trying to do this and trying to help. And there's always some kind of conflict. And she's at a point where she's like, not that she wants to avoid it, just that it's a lot.
Yeah.
So that's why you want to avoid it. You don't want to avoid it because it's going to be hurtful or detrimental. You avoid it for your own sanity.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
I think that's what a lot of us do as well in things that are serious. You avoid that because you're just like, I don't want to have a bad night. I don't want to have a bad night.
Yeah, that's going to be a big monster to slay if I open up that.
And like you said, like we said, like you start looking at how many nights do you avoid it until then it really blows up. And then you're right, you're slaying a dragon. It's just like, oh, and then there's no win, because the other person, you go to your husband and go, oh, I've been holding on to this, and then he gets defensive. Mm-hmm. Whoa, why didn't you tell me 4 nights ago? Because I didn't want to ruin the night. No. So avoidance in general, I think, is very natural, right? Because none of us want to be down. We all want our mates or our parents or our kids to be happy.
Yeah, we want to walk in the house at the end of the day and everybody's happy, and there's drama going on all over the place.
And it's hard, right? I mean, even like new relationships. You get in a new relationship, and let's say you're going down, you've been seeing somebody 2 or 3 months, let's just say, because I think that's a good measuring stick of, you've hung out a lot, you're learning each other's, idiosyncrasies, these little flaws that you see in people. And you want to bring one of these flaws to the forefront because it bothers you. When do you do it? Right. And you have to do it with some kind of, hey, like, it's bothering me, but, I like you, but, and then it comes to a thing where some of it's who we are. So
Of course.
then you have to go to and go, look, I love you the way you are, and I don't want you to change, but you have to understand that this is what's bothering me. But if you avoid those conversations, 2 years later, you're broken. You can't
And
fix
you're
that kind
still
of thing.
not happy.
And you're still, or it's still bothering you. And it can be something silly, but at least I will tell anybody anything now. If the person I like, there's an issue with, I will tell her. And even though I might even say it's not a huge deal, but I want you to know.
Right.
Because it's not something that's going to ruin our relationship, but because to me that those are serious yet small things. The small things matter.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's the same.
Because those are the things that build up. Normally, if you've been in a relationship for a while and you've been living with a person, like, you get used to the way they are, whether you like it or not, you get used to it. But if you're constantly how do I say this? I'm having a hard time today. If it's constantly working at you and working at you, you're definitely going to have something to say about it. It's going to come fester right up on the surface.
Right.
Yeah.
And when it gets to that, so sometimes you get to that point where there's no fixing it, because then people start resenting you for not giving conflict. Why didn't you tell me 5 months ago? Why didn't you tell me when we first met? Why didn't this happen? That's why, for me, be straightforward. Being straightforward can hurt, because I've had things said to me that I was like, oh,
ouch, my eye.
Yeah. And by someone that I adore.
You know what, though? I hate when you're in a relationship or you're real close to somebody and they have to tell you in a way that is hurtful. Like, I'm always trying to be diplomatic in my approach with people, because I know how hard it stings to hear something that's negative or kind of negative towards you. So I've learned over the years that the best way to do that is very kindly and without any judgment. There you go. Without any judgment. And I've gotten pretty good at it by saying, well, if this was different, this wouldn't be happening. You don't have to judge somebody. You could talk to them without having the ego that's trying to slay the beast, just talk to them. And I find that when I get to talk about it, it's not a secret. Okay. If it's not a secret, I'm cool with that, because then there's opportunity for growth, or we could try to come to some sort of agreement on it, or, talk about what it is that's really going on. And it doesn't have to be a fight. And I like to do things that way, because especially when you're in a relationship, or when you're with your kids, or when you're with people that you love, like, you don't want to break them. Mm-hmm. You want to get your point across. You could do it in a loving manner. You could be empathetic. Like, nobody needs to be perfect. Mm-hmm. Like, find a way to where it doesn't have to leave a scar. There's a difference between a slap on an ass and an iron to the head. There's a total difference.
Correct.
So if you love somebody, or if you care for them, or if you're in a situation where you're frustrated with them, remember that they're still your people. They're not the enemy. I say that a lot when I'm talking to people. Wait, I'm not the enemy. Back it up. Just tell me the story. I'll work with you. I'm always trying to kind of de-escalate the bad situation, because I don't work well when people are really angry. Nobody does.
Agree. It's some people are just brash, and I don't think that they mean to hurt people. They're just built differently. But
if they're hurting people, they need to manage that.
Correct. And again, I think it's how you say. I'll give you an example. This was many, many years ago. Someone I like, we were talking about life in general, and she was like, I could get rid of everyone in my life. Not, and she goes, and that's even not excluding you. And I was like, oh, but because you think like, hey, we like each other and we talk all the time, but I took it like, oh shit. Like she goes, yeah, just so you know, you too. Like I'll get rid of everyone. But now that I've known them a long time, like she's pretty brash, and you have to take it as just her being her. And I don't think that it's hurtful. It's just she's very straightforward. She's very much a Gemini, which is, if not that I believe a lot in the zodiacs, but if there's someone close to being that, it probably is that. But and it's funny too, because we were talking about it because my birthday was just a couple of days ago, and on lots of different zodiacs, I'm a Gemini, and on some of them, I'm a Cancer. And we were kind of going. I'll send her Gemini stuff, and she's like, "You are not a Gemini, just so you know." And I was like, "Yeah, I totally have like two different personalities." And she goes, yeah, you're a Cancer. You're emotional. You're like all these, you're empathetic, like all these things that were like, and then I started reading more on Cancer stuff just for shits. And she's like, I go, yeah, she's right. Like I am nowhere like a Gemini. I'm generally not mean. I'm like all these different things. So it's how you handle things. She could probably tell me anything now, and I know that she's not trying to be hurtful. It's just how she communicates.
Yeah.
And I know lots of people like that, mostly dudes. Dudes will, like my best friend, he will say things to me that we were talking over the weekend, and I said something about somebody, and he was like, who do you think you're talking to, dude? And I go, no. It's not like that. And he goes, yeah, it is. He goes, you've been like that for fucking years. He goes, don't try to bullshit me. He goes, I know who you are, and I've listened to you for 40 years. He goes, right? You don't think I know? And I was like, yeah. I go, I know, dude, but I'm trying to not. And he goes, don't try to bullshit me, dude. He goes, it's okay. He goes, I understand where you're coming from, but
he gets you.
Yeah. So, and that's where like, I don't avoid conflict with him. Right. There is no, years and years. He's married. He's been married. Well, let's see, almost 7 years now. So way back in the day, way back, like maybe 15 years ago, he was with somebody that I didn't think was best for him. Let's just say that, for a lot of reasons. He also kept me away from her. I think I only met her like 3 times, and they were together 10 years. And it's probably for the best, because at that time I was a different person, and I had a filter that was very, very weak, and I would say lots of mean things. But at one point they were starting to kind of lose their relationship, and I finally was like, thank goodness. Right. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, you need to get out of that shit. It's horrible for you. You're doing this, and this. She's not who you want. You're staying there just because. And I hammered him. And I don't think he was ready for that, because he was just like, oh. And I said, yeah, dude, I just, when you're best friends, you do your best to be both sides of that coin, right? Because you are avoiding the conflict of saying, hey, this girl you're dating is fucking horrible for you. Right. So you do kind of go with it and go. So the other answer is, as long as you're happy, right? And I think that's avoiding conflict for dudes. Whatever makes you happy, man.
That's what it's about. But I get why you guys do that, because guys have a really different structure for how they deal with things than women do. For sure. Yeah, we're different. We're different for sure. I get why guys want to avoid. But in all honesty, I like to avoid too. I don't like to get caught up in that. The last thing I want to do is fight with somebody. Not that I'm not good at fighting, and not that I don't, when I get to that point, won't go there. But it's just, then you got to look like an asshole. Then you got to rein it in. Then you got to apologize and look like a dickhead. Like, I don't see the point of all that. To me, because I will refuse to fight with somebody, and have been, I just shut down. And once you shut me down, that's just sad because it takes a lot to shut me down. I'm not the one that goes down without a fight, but
Right.
once you get me there, I'm like, all right.
That's my biggest problem is that I'm a fighter and I'll fight and fight and fight and fight because if I believe in something, I won't give up. And
Mm-hmm.
that in some cases is a great trait. And in other cases, it's not a good trait.
Yeah.
So, but I am sort of like you though, like when I finally decide to, cut the cord, I cut
It's
it.
cut. Yeah.
And
That's how I am. Because I'm like, I've done all I could do. You're still acting like a fool. You're not showing me respect, and I don't treat you like that. And I've said that over the years. I've said that so many times, and people will tend to get it because they'll see me in action, that I'm not trying to be the enemy, that I'm not trying to stick it to them. But until they figure that out, then we go through it. And a lot of times you don't stick it out with a person because it's just too much work. And that's sad too, because then you don't get to see how far things go.
Yeah. And like I said, the conflict part of all that we're talking about is that though, right? So, you fight and fight and fight and fight and fight. And maybe you're avoiding conflict inside that fight, but just not a lot. Like you're going and you're going. I had the same thing happen during my divorce. I was fighting for 6 months afterwards. And I got a phone call from my oldest daughter saying, look, you need to end this, blah, blah, blah. And called my ex-wife. I said, hey, do you have any, and I avoided the conflict of asking her, like, do you really want this to work for 6 months? And she finally was like, no, look, we shouldn't try, blah, blah, blah. And not too long after that, we went to our reunion, and when I cut the cord, I was like, boom, done. I didn't think about it anymore. I moved on. It was a light switch. Yeah. And so that's how I am. So I will fight until the end. But when I finally hit the light switch, there's no going backwards. I don't. So I think now differently. I mean, obviously 15 years later, I think I would not avoid a lot of conflict because I want a relationship to work. And I'd rather have a few little tiffs, because I didn't fight a lot with my ex-wife, and I probably should have more. And I know that sounds very counterproductive.
No, I get it.
But I think it is. And I was talking to my friend down the street. We were talking about relationships because she's single, and we were talking about certain things. We went to dinner one time and I was like, hey, like if you got in a relationship right now, would you be opposed to doing couples therapy from the beginning? Like nipping things in the ass. Like it's okay to just talk with somebody and like where you're going in life. And I don't mean like after the second date. I'm talking like, you've decided to be a couple and you're moving forward in something. And she was like, oh yeah, I'd totally do that. Because I heard it on a podcast, and the guy goes, I think it's a great idea. Once you're in a committed relationship with somebody, it's okay to, because then you have a middle person that if you have little things that might be a problem, you have someone to kind of, go back and forth with you. So you're avoiding conflict by having someone else help you. That's not your family or friend or whatever.
A lot of family. I would say go to a therapist before you go to your family, just because that's a different dynamic. And your family's, I believe that you learn your lessons from having family. Mm-hmm. And then you learn how to cope with everything by creating your own family, by having your people, by having your friends that are close to you that you stick with and do things with. Like those are the people that got your back. I don't believe it's your people that come from the same, that are cut from the same cloth. I do believe that those are lessons that you need to learn with them.
For sure. Because I think that by going down that road, there's other things that can happen. Mm-hmm. You're less likely to, because then you might have conflict with the family over your mate. And I know that, there's issues with that within a family. Mm-hmm. Who you pick. I pick who I want to pick. Like, so And then the family will avoid the conflict of saying like, and it happened with me, like, oh, we knew she wasn't good for you from the beginning. It's like, okay. Thankfully, my family didn't tell me until the end, which is great because I believe that that's fair. You have to let your family live within your dynamic, right? So they avoided conflict with me by just letting me pick a mate. And I think now my closest family, obviously my son, I've talked to him about certain things because of people around me that I like. And he's very straightforward. And I like that. He's a little more mature than most of his friends because he grew up really fast. I said, hey, what do you think about this? He goes, I don't care, dude. Go be happy. Because he goes, and he kind of said, like, he goes, I won't be here forever. I'm going to go have a life of my own and I'm going to meet my own girlfriend. And then what? And I go, I won't care, be with who you want to be with. It's your relationship, not mine. So I'm kind of glad that he kind of learned that from me, because maybe he'll go into his next relationship with, not avoiding conflict, but doing the right thing because he knows how to talk with people. And he understands that sometimes conflict is good and sometimes avoiding it is better.
Well, and like in relationships with conflict, like there comes a point in time where you really have to deal with the conflict. You have to have the tough decisions. You have to tell the truth. You have to show up basically in honesty in that sort of relationship. But once that happens too, then if you want things to work, you need to continue to work on keeping things better, keeping the bond close. And then a lot of times, couples, and I was one of them, like we couldn't even talk at times. Like there could be no resolution. It just don't fan the flames. Like let it go. Just calm it down for as much as you could calm it down. And then, go at it later when you feel like you could get somewhere. But I think a lot of times people with family members, with mates, they have this conflict and they want to hold on to it. Being right is a big deal, right? Or showing you that it is you, that you're supposed to do that, right? You're supposed to mirror people, right? And no, like, especially in a relationship, your primary goal is to support and be loving and hope that as you guide each other through life, that you learn the lessons you're supposed to learn, but it doesn't need to be with a swift kick in the head. Like when it's your mate, they should put on kid gloves and they should be a little kinder, or say it without, abusing the other person or without making them feel like they're inadequate. I believe that we need to start respecting our mates, especially, like they are everything to us, because that's how they're supposed to be, honestly.
For sure.
And use kid gloves. It doesn't mean don't deal with the conflict. It doesn't mean let it go, because I'm not a believer in that. But what it does mean is remember, this is somebody you love. This isn't somebody you want to win against.
Right.
Nobody wins if you're fighting. So you kind of want to, I don't know, I always tell people, be kind to each other. Like start with that. See where the other one's coming from. Try to understand them. And truly, if you want to know them, don't come in with an opinion, because they're not going to show you the real them if you've already got them wrong.
I love your answer of you don't always have to be right.
Mm-mm.
And I think that that's a very true statement, where you will avoid conflict by making sure that your mate, even your family, knows that you don't always have to be right. Because
I don't want a perfect person, because I cannot be perfect. I would like to find somebody that would perfectly work with me.
Yeah, it's I put a meme on the other day. It was basically saying, look, we all come with baggage. There's two people. There's two kinds of people that you're in a relationship. one who steps over the bag and then one that picks it up and helps you unpack it.
Yeah.
So
that's a good one.
It could, because I think it's true, because look, we're all flawed. As we get older, we have tons of other issues. But you have to look at somebody. If I'm looking at a mate right now, if I think like, oh, she's not going to have problems, you're crazy.
Everybody has problems.
We've lived 50 years.
Everybody. So
to think that that you can't be okay with having a shit ton of flaws, where you're avoiding your own conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you're going to have flaws. Come over here and sit next to me. I got them too. Let me help you heal.
Right.
Because that's the reality of the world. And it's no different with your parents. If you had a shitty relationship with your parents growing up, it's okay to go back to them and go, look, maybe you fucked up a little bit. Maybe I was a shitty kid. How do we fix this so we can avoid conflict going forward for the remaining years of your life?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and vice versa with your kid. Same thing. Let's say you had a falling out with your child. Same difference.
Absolutely.
You can make it work, and it can be, not a conflict. It can be avoiding a serious conflict by, an olive branch.
Yeah.
So,
and if you truly love the person, you don't want to slaughter them. Like, give them a hand, help them up out of it, try to work with them, do what you got to do, and be kind. Or fight with them, be miserable, fuck everything up, and then you'll be miserable alone and have to deal with who you are and your ego on your own.
And I think that that's the bigger thing is like, look, we're not going to change.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I take that back. You're not going to change the other person.
Right.
Right. You can change, because I have changed in the last 7 years of my life with people that I've liked. I've changed 5 years ago. I think 6 and 5 years ago, I did a lot of dumb shit that I know better to do now. I think differently. I react differently, or I'm trying, because I have my bumps and bruises, but I won't avoid the conflict of with her over certain things, because I think it's important for both of us to understand where we sit. She's the same. She's very blunt, and I kind of like that. And I think that you should do the same along everyone in your family. At one point, me and my mom had issues while I was married. And to the point where she didn't like what I was going to name my son. And it became an issue, a big one. To the point where I had to call my mom and go, you're either going to call him this or don't call me ever again.
Wow.
And I said those exact words, because I wasn't going to let that slide. I was 31 years old at the time. I go, I'm an adult. You don't want to call your grandson this name, then don't. But I'm done.
Wow.
And yeah, it was rough. I'm telling you, it was rough, but I couldn't avoid that conflict because it had to be said. So at the end of the day, my mom called back and was like, you're correct. I'm sorry. I did dumb things, and I'm going to be calling him by his name because that's what you're going to name him. And loved her grandson until the day she died. So, but I didn't avoid that conflict for the best of everyone. And I think
that running from conflicts, they're probably some of the worst things you could do, because just because you don't want to deal with it doesn't mean the problem's going to get better if you don't.
Correct. And don't get me wrong, no one likes it. No, nobody walks into the room going, man, can't wait to fight with my girlfriend today. No man alive on this planet wants to do that. Unfortunately, we have to sometimes, and vice versa. Look, I don't think most girls like conflict. No one does.
I don't know. I think girls more than men definitely like conflict more.
Maybe.
Because they cause a lot more. normally. Guys are indifferent. They just won't, pay attention. But girls, they'll create a little shitstorm.
I won't argue that fact, but I think that most people, don't want a serious conflict because it sucks. It drains you. It fucking stresses you out. It gives you anxiety. You get depression from it. There's all kinds of issues that come from that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, avoiding it for so long makes it too big. If you have a problem with me, and that means all of us, come to me the first time so we can get it out in front of everything.
Let's squash it.
Let's fix this shit now. Because if I love you, I'm going to want to fix it.
Even if that means you have to change a little bit.
Wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Like I said, I did a couple of dumb things over the last couple of years that I had to, if you've ever heard the term love bombing, I'm really good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Like really good. I sent flowers, all kinds of things. But at a time period where I shouldn't have. Let's just say that. That's the better way of putting it. Now I sit back and go, I can't do this kind of thing. I can't do this. I can't do that because it's not right. And I'm not helping the situation. So now, like I said, I step back now because I've changed myself because it's for the better of everyone.
Yep.
Your mate, your parent, your child, all of that will fall into place and people will change on their own. If they don't want to change, then they don't want, they may
not want to make it work.
Right. They don't want the better part of whatever that is. And sometimes you have to just go, okay, as bad as it hurts. Because you can't change the people who don't want to change. If your child doesn't want to be in your life, then sometimes you got to go, okay. If this, if your boyfriend is getting distant and he's not going to be in your life, you have to let him go. It's the way it is. People come together because they want to, and they'll make things work. Even if it's having a lot of conflict in the beginning or making sure they don't avoid it at all to make things work. And I think it's an important part of being human to either avoid for the right reasons or not avoid for the right reasons.
I don't know. I think that if it's something that just isn't sitting well, you need to say something. But there are so many ways to say something that it doesn't have to be a huge shit show. Like I have a friend that I was just talking to, and she was telling me about her kid and about her husband and about this and that. And I said to her, this isn't a big problem. Like, you want your husband to be close with your daughter and you want things to work out that way. But yeah, you don't like that they're ganging up on you. Talk about that, but leave them alone for having a good relationship. Like you don't put your jealousy and everything into this. Like, you got to give them something that they could work for too. And if it's including you, just say, hey, I need to be included. I'm their mom. I'm the mom. Talk like that. Not like, oh, you asshole, where were you when I was having the baby? And where were you when I was taking him to school? Like, that's not fair. And that's not anything constructive that somebody could even fix or win at. Not even. I say win because sometimes you just have to let your mate get a win.
Yes.
There has to be time where that happens too. And I don't know, if you love the person that you're having a conflict with, try to resolve it as humanely as possible without leaving scars, because it will never. I was in a relationship for 17 years, and stupid shit that I did in the beginning never sat right with the person that I was with. And 17 years later, we were still talking about the stuff that didn't sit well. So if you stay away from it, you could be dealing with it forever. And if you're too mean in dealing with it, you could be sitting in it forever as well. So try to remember that the person that you're with is somebody that you chose, is somebody that you wanted to be with, is somebody that supposedly makes you happy, right? That's why you choose the person, because they got
Right.
your back and they help support and they make you laugh and they build you up. Like that's who you're gonna be with, right? That's who you want to be with. So why would you do anything different?
Yeah, that's the perfect way to end this.
And it
I don't
did
think,
again. No.
yeah, I don't think you could put it any other way.
Yeah. No. Well,
It's very true. There's something to what you just said. You have to be constructive and you have to sometimes not win to make
yeah.
sure to avoid the conflict. I totally agree. I think that ego is a huge problem between everyone. And that's
Yep.
everyone we've talked about. Parents,
Parents, kids,
yeah,
spouses,
everyone,
parents. I must say parents again because parents, I'm dealing with that. Even
bosses,
siblings.
yeah,
Yeah,
everyone.
absolutely.
It's how you deal. And I think that if you step back for a second, realize what you have, you will make the right decisions going forward. And I think that too many people make decisions on the fly instead of ruminating for a second or two on their own and then going into, because I think that if you think things out, you will avoid conflict because maybe it's for the best, or you're going to go in and go, we have to talk about this, and that's for the best.
I'd hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to call it a day. This is, make sure you check us out on the social medias, the Facebook, Instagram, and X. You can check us out on anywhere you can listen to podcasts. Please share this with your friends and family, even though we do curse. And yeah, it's an opinion show, so don't get it twisted. Keep coming back every Wednesday. For Tina, I'm Rob, and we'll see you next week. See ya.